Hello, everyone. This hour on Verbling, the next in my Great Short Stories series, we're on short story 36. Our Christmas story. Well, kind of a Christmas story. We're working on George Saunders' Chicago Christmas 1984. And we've read it already. At least we began in the last class. So we'll be talking about it and maybe reading parts from the second part of the story today. That's a little bit about the class. Here's a bit about me. I'm John Eric, your Verbling teacher for this hour. I'm an American teacher from New York, hanging out in Lisbon, Portugal to bring you this class. By the way, here are 3 quick rules to help you participate. Don't forget to turn off, tune in, and open up. That means turn off your microphone when you're not speaking so we can keep the classroom nice and quiet. Tune in to the new words you're learning and the new phrases. Use them as actively as you can so that I can correct you and give you feedback. Finally, open up to your classmates. Relax and have fun. We're all here to learn, and this is a safe and respectful place to practice your English. And that is all you need to know about me. I want to know something about you, so come on in, say hello, and we will get started. In the meantime, let me share my screen with you. And when you click on the link, you will see this. So you know you're in the right place. In fact, let's put that in the chat window too. Do that right now for you. Okay, there it is in the Verbling chat. And if you don't have access to it for some reason, I've got it now also in the interior chat, the group chat as well. Okay, so in the last class, we read the first part, and let me see what I can do here. I'm going to open a link on my computer. Let me just open that. Okay. Let me go back and put it back on the picture till we get some people in here. There we go. Okay, so we've read a little bit of George Saunders in the past. We've read some essays that he's written about other writers. I included it in one of the classes. So you might be familiar, a little bit familiar with him. Where can I start here? I guess what I can do, I don't want to discuss it until I know if you've read the whole story, but we can maybe just give a little summary of what's happened so far. In the first part of the story, which we kind of get the feeling this is more of a memoir, less of a story. The narrator, for example, doesn't have a name, and he seems to have a strong resemblance to the actual author. Now, that doesn't mean he is the author, but we get the feeling this is kind of like a personal memory, a memoir, personal memory of the past. And the title, Christmas 1984, it's very specific. So we get the idea that this is something personal. We get the idea that this is perhaps autobiography. And there's other themes playing out here as well, because we have this urban landscape. We have very realistic characters. We've got very realistic dialogue. So this sort of gives you the sense that this is something that really happened. And I think that's going to be important as we try to analyze the story. Okay, anyway, back to the summary. So we meet our narrator, who has, we get the sense, tried to make it as a writer. In the very first sentence, we find out that he's tried to emulate, I guess, his hero at the time, Jack Kerouac. Jack Kerouac was famous for his novel On the Road, among others. which was not exactly a typical novel. It was an experimental novel. So he wrote about his experiences through fictional characters, um, and he really did take these trips across the country, something that people maybe hadn't done, sort of taking a cue from Woody Guthrie and the folk heroes of the time. So he did something similar. So our narrator tries to emulate Jack Kerouac, we find out, and he ends up not so much a famous writer. By the way, Jack Kerouac didn't end up as a famous writer either. He ended up pretty much broke as well. But later, much later, his novels got sold and he became a sensation, but not at the time. In George Saunders' case, or the narrator's case, the same thing happens. So we pick up the story with him being broke. He's able to court a girlfriend, he says. So he's able to have a relationship with a girl that he would never have been able to have in high school. It was a high school sweetheart. But that's not going very well because she's tired of being poor and he's not earning any money. In fact, we find out that she's paying for everything. So that's where it picks up. So to solve this problem, he gets a manual labor job. He becomes a roofer, that is to say, someone who goes and repairs tiles on the roof. Now, he's already a little different than everyone else because he's the only white guy in the whole company. So, and this is at a time when, first of all, he's in a city that is notoriously segregated, like many cities. So you've got the south side of Chicago, which is where the Chicago blues comes from. So a predominantly black area. So he's a white guy in the black area doing a manual labor job, and he doesn't quite fit in. In fact, everyone hates him. He's really bad at his job. So he's an unsuccessful writer and really bad at shingling or putting tiles on the roof. And there's a lot of self-deprecating humor there as well about it. When they need someone who is really bad at the job, he says they call him. So we follow him on his early days as a roofer. We meet particularly one character called John, who is someone else that is a bit of an outcast. John is older. He claims to be a virtuoso roofer, but there's no evidence that he is a great roofer. He just says that to get the job. And the person that hired him, we find out, has already passed away. So there's absolutely no proof that he can do what he said he could do. And they don't let him work. His job is to hold the bucket of tar and maybe carry it up a ladder, and that's it. But he's older, so everyone else is in their, we get the sense, in their 20s and, early 20s, like like George, and or they're younger. And this guy's already 42. He's got a bit of gray hair, and they make fun of him because he's got 14 kids, they say. So he's really got to get some work. In the first part of the story that we read, geez, I hope someone's going to come into the class. Otherwise, I'm going to have to stop here. Just to finish up the summary, in the first part of the story that we read, our narrator and John go off on a little escapade together. So John brings the narrator, drives him home, I guess, but they end up making a few stops. He ends up going to see his family, and he finds out that he really does have 14 kids. It's not a joke. He meets the guy's, we guess it's his girlfriend, find out that they're not living together, and we get the sense that they're not living together because welfare, or Social Security, will give her more money if she's a single mom. So we get this idea that John's whole goal at this moment, his modus operandi, as we say, is to get real work and real income so that he doesn't have to live separate from his girlfriend and his kids. I don't know if all 14 are his kids, but anyway, some of them are. So he's got, the stakes are high for him. Our narrator, on the other hand, well, he's in kind of a similar position. He's going to lose his girlfriend. He's gone nowhere with his life. He's not that young, right? So he's young, but he's in his late 20s or approaching his late 20s, and he probably should have amounted to more by this point, or he's starting to feel the pressure at least. So there's something similar about them. We meet a few other characters, like the boss. I think his name is Vic, if I remember right, and a few other characters, and they're kind of rough. So let's take a look at a little bit of the dialogue. Give me a second here. Just to give you an example. You've really got to hear the dialogue. Let's see. They're talking about John at one point. So here on page 4, let's look at this, for example. We meet Vic and Gary. We got John speaking first, who says they really have to give him real work. He can't just stand around holding a tar bucket all day. He's got, we later find, some real motivation to get work. So John says, it ain't right. I can't do it. They need to give me a chance. I'm an older man, got responsibilities. Can't just keep carrying tar my whole life. In late November, talk turned to the yearly Christmas party. Drinks and food were on Warner. Warner's like the owner of the company. Oh, it says it there. Warner, the owner. People got S-faced. We're going to leave out the explicatives when we do this story, but you get the idea. They all got drunk. People got S-faced. Also, there was gambling. Then we're going to see, Vic said one day. We're going to see if John here is a better gambler than he is a roofer. You gotta hope, said Gary. As a roofer, John, face it, you suck, Vic said. Nice guy, S-roofer. Too effing slow, John, Gary said. We keep giving you chances and you keep screwing it up. But maybe why he's an S-roofer is he's a gambling man, says Vic. What you're going to find out is I'm a roofer and a gambler both, says John. Excuse me saying it, Vic said, when John had gone down to help Leon load the cauldron. But that is a prime example of N-think. We're not going to say the N-word when we read the story, but you get the idea. That is a prime example of N-think. He thinks he's a roofer because he says he is. Thinks he can gamble because he says he can. Has 14 kids and lets the welfare pay, said Gary. So, that's what John's got to deal with. A bunch of jerks. But maybe the point is that he's trying to clean up his act. Maybe he really is a bad roofer. Maybe he really is slow. But they're certainly not going to give him much of a chance. And we get our first hint that something else is going to happen in this story. They're talking about gambling. So their Christmas party, their great Christmas party, is just that. Everyone is going to be gambling. All right, let's stop here for a minute and just double check that the Hangout is actually working, because I see a few people watching, but no one's coming in. So let me just make sure that I'm actually signed in and everything. I think I am, but let me just double check. It could be that everyone is sleeping in for Christmas. Let me just see if I'm signed in. If I am, yeah, it looks like I am. Okay. All right. Well, if no one's coming in, I'll just talk to myself for an hour. So, where we left off, was the Christmas party had begun. Um, let's see. We got a little sense of oh yeah, the Christmas party had begun. The narrator met John's family and knows a bit about what's going on. So we're going to pick it up at the Christmas party. And you should already have read part one. In fact, it would have been a good idea to have read part two so we could just discuss it. The more you read for the second class, the more time we have to talk about it. Um, but since no one's here, I'll just start reading. Here we go. We ate, we drank, and the checks were distributed. We waddled drunkenly across the South Chicago Avenue to Currency Exchange. By the way, take a look at my notes over here. Like what animal? So here, we waddled drunkenly. Like what animal? Can you picture, what does it say? Can you picture this in your mind? So when you get description like this, you've got to visualize this. And if you click on the link for waddle, you'll see this is what a duck does. We waddled drunkenly, so you can picture how they're walking. They have no coordination. We waddled drunkenly across South Chicago Avenue to Currency Exchange to cash the checks, after which the gambling began. I didn't know a thing about gambling, and I didn't want to. I rolled my 4 fresh hundreds and put them in the front pocket of my tar-stiff jeans, occasionally patting the lock to make sure that they were occasionally patting the pocket to make sure they were still real. And by the way, there's a note there for 4 fresh hundreds. What did he roll? So there's a missing word because it's obvious to a native speaker. It's 4 fresh, meaning brand new, $100 bills. Remember, this is 1984. 400 was a pretty good amount of money in 1984. Maybe that's more like something like double, as what it would be today. I don't know, something like that. Finally, in terms of money, I got it. Money forestalled disgrace. I'll open that up in just a second. Money forestalled disgrace. I thought of my aunt, who worked 3 jobs, and whom I had not yet paid a dime for food, and of my girlfriend, who now paid whenever we went out, which was never, because my 5 shirts were too stained with tar. And we see forestalled. No, it's not going to load. There we go. To stop something. To stop from happening or to cause to happen at a later time. In other words, to delay. You ain't gambling, Leon? Said Vic. Leon said nobody understood, said something nobody understood, and disappeared out the door. I suspect Leon is pea-bound. We're going to leave out the anatomical words as we read the story. Smart man, said Vic. This is kind of important. Leon leaves. No matter why he leaves, but he leaves. By the way, bound means heading towards. So in other words, they're saying he's going home to his wife or girlfriend or whatever. Smart man to leave the gambling. This is kind of important. Keep this in mind. Why does the author give us a character who leaves before the party begins? Particularly because the boss says smart man. So I think it's a point that will be important later on when we see John's decision not to leave. John did gambler things with his shirt sleeves, spat on his hands, hopped around on one foot, blew on the dice. Then he said his 400s. Then he laid his I can't read today. Then he laid his 400s out near the craps box and gave them a lecture. They were to go forth and multiply. They were to find others of their kind and come scampering back. And I have a note there. You can see it here on the left. The highlight is on the left and the note is on the right. What sorts of things do you think he means? John did gambler things. And also down there, what do these things reveal about his character? What do they show? So let's see. Adi, are you out there? I see your face. Can you hear me? Hello, Adi? Hello? Uh-oh, he's got a problem. Where's my mic? Uh-oh. Do you want to leave, restart the browser, and come back? Or is it a problem on your computer? Oh, he's coming back, okay. So think about that for a minute, everyone. Why does the author say gambler things rather than describe those things? My feeling is because they're not important. We all know what people do when they're going to play cards or gamble, roll up their shirt sleeves or do these meaningless things. But it's an important point, actually, because it's all about the ritual of what they're going to do. And this story is actually a lot about ritual in a funny way. So when we say gambler things, we probably mean that he's doing these empty sort of ritualistic things, rolling up his sleeves, I don't know, putting his hat on backwards, whatever people do when they're about to gamble. So, Adi, are you out there? We're still having mic problems. I can't hear you, so hello, Adi. Okay, Adi.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Oh, I got wrong to plug my jack. My it's totally error.
But now you're
Yeah.
here, and everything's okay.
Yeah. Everything's okay now. Thanks God.
So, Adi, did you read the second part of the story, or just did you read any of the story? I can't remember if you were here on Tuesday.
I don't. No, I didn't hear on Tuesday.
Okay. So, did you read any part of this yet?
It's the new. Oh, it's a new story. I haven't seen it before.
Okay.
But that's okay.
All right. So, I don't know where everyone is today because I've got a lot of people signed up for the class, but no one's here. So, what I'm doing is we read the first part on Tuesday. We already read it. I summarized it in the beginning of class today, and I just started to read the second part. Did you catch the summary, or did you? I don't know if you were watching before.
I don't watching. I just get home from my relatives' homes. I just get home and then I know it's too late, and then I keep doing.
Okay, so look, in the first part of the story, this is basically a memoir. Do you know what a memoir is? Have you heard that before? A memoir?
Memoir is. Oh, I know this. It is about. Oh, it's not. Lawrence. I don't know.
A memoir? Well, what do you think? What do you think a memoir? What kind of writing do you think it's going to be? Does it sound? Yeah, go ahead.
It's gonna be a lot of funny things.
Okay, maybe. Why? Why funny?
Because because I just start to remember that I'm here. I joined the class on the Thursday about the John. It is about someone who's roofing or
yeah, that's it.
yes. it's a it's it's a funny story.
You were here. Yeah, it's
I
about
were.
So look,
Mhm.
memoir probably reminds you of another word, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Memoir?
Yes,
What does it sound like? What word does it sound like?
like a memory.
Exactly. So memoir is a perhaps fictional, perhaps not fictional story, which is a memory that you've had. Usually a novel, but anyway, it's sort of somewhere between fiction and nonfiction because we can't remember things as accurately as they really were. So that's why I say it's a little bit fiction. And this is kind of a memoir, but it's short. So we meet the narrator, who's a white guy, probably from a relatively good family, who has a relatively good education, tries to be a writer, and is not successful. Well, he's very young. He's in his early 20s, mid 20s. He ends up as a roofer. He befriends a guy named John.
Mm.
Remember John?
Yes, I remember him.
All right. And the two of them are kind of hated by everyone else on the roofing in the roofing company because they're kind of different. So I think that's the main thing from part one. And we go to meet John's family. Do you remember the part where we met John's girlfriend and the kids?
Yeah, and 14 years old, I think. His kid is about 14.
No, no,
Yeah.
no. His kid is not 14. He has 14 kids.
Oh, 14 kids. Oh, okay.
Most
Wow.
people have one or two, but apparently he's
Yeah.
got 14. If you
Okay.
if you watch the news in America, particularly the right-wing news, they're always talking about uh, part of the part of the you know, well, I'm not going to get too political. Part of the propaganda in the more right-leaning news is about how certain people use the government to get free money. And this story is
Oh.
playing with that idea a little bit because his girlfriend lives alone so she can get welfare money. And the more kids you have, the more subsidy you're going to get, right?
Mm.
So
Okay.
they're painting this picture of this stereotype. Do you get the feeling that John is a stereotype or that he's a real person from what you've read?
Um,
Do you know
I
what I mean by
think he's.
stereotype, by the way? Is that clear what
Uh,
stereotype is?
I know a little bit about stereotype. It is means that you mark on somebody else, or how do I put it in English? It means that he's like a little. mm, I don't know.
Give an
I
example.
don't know how to. It's like for example, he's mm, like for example,
Hmm.
uh, for
Is a stereotype a good thing or a bad thing?
it's a bad thing because
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what is a stereotypical American like?
Okay, I think it's a little bit rough. No?
Rough. Yeah.
Yeah, a
So
little bit rough and
so think about your stereotypical American tourist. Doesn't speak the language, wears a Hawaiian shirt, really loud.
that's right. Yeah.
Not all American tourists are like that, right? But that's their stereotype. So a stereotype is a generalization, usually not a good
Ah,
one,
okay.
often even a racist one or a sexist one. It's some kind of
That's
generalization
right.
that, yeah. So when we encounter John, it's a little bit like a stereotype. I mean, maybe we have some sympathy for him, but we meet this guy, black guy, poor neighborhood, bad job. He lies. We get the sense he lies to get the job, and his girlfriend is a welfare queen. In other words, she's got kids She's getting money from the government, not working. It all fits this stereotype that white people have about black people. By the end of the story, we have to revisit that stereotype and see if we still feel the same way, or if the story goes beyond the stereotype to tell a truer story. I think it will. Um, okay, so I just picked up here where they go to the holiday party and they're about to start gambling, and this guy Leon leaves. We don't know why, but the boss says, "Smart man, he's not going to gamble." And John gets ready to gamble, rolls up his sleeves or whatever, and tells his money to go forth and multiply. He's like talking to his money. Okay, so let's just take turns reading. Why don't you take the next section there? Go
Okay.
ahead, Adi.
Vic gone to the bank that morning. He showed us his roll. It held maybe $3,000. His wife didn't dare say shit about it. Who earned it, him or her? I do, he answered himself. The gambling began, one by one. The guys lost what they could lose and drifted back to stand against the workable and diddle
Diddle.
with the diddle with the soldering iron. Soon only John was left. Why was John left? Vic kept counting. A whole autumn of such towns
Such.
now did such such town sounds
Taunts.
now did towns. Okay, a whole autumn of such towns now did their work. Or belittle. Okay.
Belittled. Belittled.
Or belittle man dream. A huge redemption, redemption,
That's right.
redemption.
That's
He,
right. Redemption.
okay, redemption. He was John, dreaming in rest to John's dream. Vic and Gary began to speak with mock professorial diction.
And you got a little note over here. Diction, you can see on the right.
Professional.
Diction is the way you speak. How do you think mock or false professorial diction sounds? So, professorial is from professor, right? So,
Okay.
Gary and Vic, they're talking about John. How do you think they sound? How do you think they're going to sound if it's mock professorial?
Is it like um it's like
How does a
Vic and Gary
professor
began.
how does a professor sound?
Yeah, it's like very intelligent, not very intelligent, intellectual.
Right. Very intellectual, right? So that's how they're
Okay.
trying to sound. Do they have a good education, these people?
No.
No. So they don't really know how to sound like a professor, but they're going to try to
Yeah.
make fun of John. Okay, just a quick point. Everyone loses money and they go back and diddle, and we see here, diddle means to manipulate. In other words, just to play with things, to diddle. They go diddle with the equipment. And taunt, because that was a word that came up as well. Uh, let's see, we have a definition. You can see some synonyms down there. Bait, cod, rag, rally, raz. Taunt is to make fun of. And you've got examples there on the right side of the page, too. Don't taunt the police. Uh, Smarter Than You, released this week for Apple's mobile devices, is a taunt and a challenge. So these are taken from news sources. So
Thought,
they're real examples. Taunt.
thought.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Um, so this is important to realize. Why was John left? He's the narrator is asking that. In other words, maybe it's not a coincidence that only John is left. Do they like John?
No.
No, they don't. So maybe it's
Okay.
not a coincidence that John has left. Vic kept taunting, so he's making fun of John. And then we got this line here. A whole autumn of such taunts now did their work. So, have they been making fun of him for a long time?
Yes,
Yes.
it's a whole autumn. Yes, it is.
Okay.
Right.
Belittled men dream of a huge redemption. Belittled men. Is John a belittled man? What do you think, Adi?
Mm, let, let me define belittle.
Belittle is very easy. It's very easy. Two words. Be little.
Little. Okay.
The opposite of being big, it's being little.
He's just a rough man. So, I think yeah.
So, belittle is when someone makes you feel small. So, belittled men, huge of a dream huge. Oh my God, I can't speak. Dream of a huge redemption. We think of Napoleon. There's a little guy who did big things. And John
Yes.
feels like a little Napoleon, right? He's been made fun of for months and months and months. Now he's at the gambling table and he thinks he's going to get some revenge. So I want to point that out because it's really important. It's not an accident that he's there. We get the idea. The narrator gets the idea. It's not an accident. Okay,
Hmm.
Vic and Gary begin to speak with mock professorial diction. Let me read this part so you can hear
Okay.
mock professorial. Here we go. Look at this! Kindly look at this! Vic shouted. John is not, after all, any more a gambler than he is an ergo roofer. That is, he is a equally sucky gambler as he is a suck-ass roofer. Are you saying, said Gary, that his gambling, in terms of how much does it suck, sucks exactly as much as does suck his roofing? Perzactly. Yup, that is just what I'm saying, Vic burped. Er? So that's the mock professorial terms.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay.
Perzactly is a combination of exactly and perfectly put together. Perzactly.
The sarcastic sounds. No?
They're being very sarcastic. Perzactly is not a
Okay.
word. They invented it.
Yeah.
And then it says John burned. So how did he feel? John burned. How did he feel?
He feel like very, very angered. No?
Yeah, very angry. He
Very
burned.
angry.
We say
Burn.
someone burns with rage. So he's really angry. John burned. They were going to see. Look at the note I put there. What does see mean here? Hint. They were going to witness something, not literally see something. What do you think they were going to witness, Adi? What's going on in John's head?
Uh, they were going to see what does okay.
John
I
burned.
think
They were going to see. That's what he's thinking
they
this to himself.
yeah, they will see that he's not a real little man.
Exactly. He's not a belittled man. He's going to get his revenge. They were going to see that the long years of wrongs done to him had created a tremendous backlog of owed good luck. He thinks that life owes him, right? So he's been treated so bad for so long that he's going to get that his luck has got to change now.
Mhm.
So had created a backlog of owed good luck, which was going to surge forward now, wholly impersonal. And see, they did. In other words, that's exactly
Yes.
what happened. Soon, John was down to his last 100. Then he broke it, meaning he lost it. Then he was down to his last 20. Then Vic cackled. Cackled is like laughing. Ha 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 ha. And
Okay.
John threw his sole remaining $5
Five.
bill
Okay.
at Vic's chest. Vic
Yeah.
caught it. Vic kissed it. He added it to his tremendous wad. A wad, we can look up here. We say a wad of cash. And if you look here at vocabulary.com, wad is material, stuff.
Material stuff. A
Yeah,
mass of soft material.
a
As noun.
big
Okay.
a big pile of
Big
something.
amount. And a large amount for a lot of
So
money.
what?
Okay.
Yeah, he had a wad of money in this case. So, did John get his revenge?
Mm, unlucky. She didn't. He didn't.
He didn't. Just the opposite. he he
Yeah,
thought
it's the opposite.
he thought he was going to have luck after all of this taunting and years of bad luck, and it's the exact opposite. He lost everything he just earned. Okay, let's find out what happens next. Go ahead, Andy.
Like when in my head and has stayed on ever since. It was all about Carol. Vic could lose and lose and never really lose. Once Jones dipped below 400, he was dead. He was dead now. Which was when the Warner came in and passed out the bonus checks. Warner was the owner, a big man. Tonight he was wearing a tie. Afternoons, he drove from side to side in his Lincoln,
Lincoln.
cracking out Lincoln.
Lincoln
Lincoln
is
is
a really
interesting.
big car, almost like a
Oh,
Cadillac.
okay. Cranking out estimates, listening to opera because he thought thought it was fag music. It floated his boat. John took his crack. Jack,
Took,
no.
yeah, check.
John took Jack. Made for the door. I followed him. You're doing right, I said. Go home. I ain't going home, John said. Ain't going home, John said. And numb footed across South Chicago again. Numb footed? So no no
Numb-footed,
no.
so he can't.
Uh,
He. They're all drunk. He can't feel his feet. He's
yes.
numb-footed.
Yeah. No 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 no. I mumbled. Vividly. Drunk. Suddenly alive. What had happened to me? Chris, was I?
Chris?
Where was
Chris?
I?
Chris?
Chris,
Look
where
again.
was I?
Christ. Christ.
Oh yeah, not Chris. Christ, where was I? Whither my promise, my easy
Promise.
season
Promise.
promise. Whither my promise, my easy season of victories, my field of dominant, my dominant field of my boyhood playful
Triumph.
triumph,
Triumph.
boyhood triumph is so
There you
hard.
go.
Triumph. Okay.
There you go. So, Warner, I made a little note over here. Warner clearly has issues. Because he says it's fag music. Fag is a derogatory term for homosexual, of
Yes.
course. So,
Uh-huh.
but
What's
this is
another way to
1980,
put it?
this is 1984, and back in 1984, I guess you wouldn't hear people. I really don't think anyone would use the word fag seriously anymore. Well, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Yes.
It seems like a very dated thing to say. So he listens
Yes.
to opera because it's quote fag music, but it floats his boat. I don't know what that means. so
Yes.
so he's homophobic, but he listens to it because it's gay. I don't know what that means. Anyway, Warner is clearly not the most enlightened person on the planet, uh, and he seems very pretentious as well. So he's listening to opera because I guess he thinks that's what you're supposed to do when you've got money. I don't know. Uh, and then John is not going home, and the narrator suddenly he's drunk, but he suddenly wakes up and he starts to think, starts to get ideas. Whither my promise, my easy season of victories? He realizes that his life is a lot easier than John's. I guess that's what he's saying here. He's kind of drunk, thinking not so clearly. He's got this kind of literary voice in his head. Whither my promise? What about my promise? Whither is an old way of saying what about? Whither, whither my promise, my easy season victories, my field of dominant field of boyhood, playful triumph. In other words, I guess he had some idea when he was young about being successful or something like that. He's getting some idea forming in his head, maybe to help John. Let's see. I'll take this next part here. It was so cold, my little mustache had frozen. Oh, this is definitely 1984. He's got a mustache. It was so cold, my little mustache had frozen. Our bonuses matched, 300 each. The man at the currency exchange looked at us either sadly or suspiciously. So they get the check and they go immediately, not home, but they go to cash it immediately on Christmas Day. So they're at some nasty place where they give you cash for your check, not a bank. Um, so the guy looks at them strangely. When I doubled back to ask, he reached for something under the counter. He goes back to ask why the guy's looking at him, and he sees the guy puts his hand under the counter. What do you think he's reaching for? This is the guy at the shop that just gave them the money. You have to picture this, Adi. All right, the guy just gave him the money. He sees the guy's looking at him very suspiciously, so he's so drunk he goes back and he's about to ask him, "Hey, why are you looking at me like that?" Right? So he
Yes.
turns around to go ask him, and the guy reaches for something under the counter. What do you think he's reaching for?
Rich money now?
Not money. Guess again.
Reaching reaching for like an alarm or maybe or something that to hit him back if he.
He's reaching for a gun.
Oh yeah, I mean like
He goes back to ask, "Hey, why are you looking at me like that?" And the guy reaches for like a gun. We can only guess. Maybe it's an alarm, but I have a feeling it's a gun because he's like
yeah.
he doesn't trust these people cashing money on Christmas Day. Um, right? Okay. And okay, go home, man. I say to John out on the street. You at least got your bonus, right? Can't, John huffed. Got to get all that back. No way that man's taking my Christmas money for my babies. You're not going to get it back, John, I said. Ain't I, though? He said. So John is strangely confident, even though he just lost his entire paycheck. He's still got $300 to spend. The same law that had broken him the first time broke him again. Same law. Vic took it and took the money. Vic, I said, so drunk I was unsure I was actually speaking. What am I supposed to do? Vic said, glaring at me. He's a man, right? He wants to play. Ain't nobody forcing him. Ain't nobody forcing me, said John.
Yeah,
So,
it's very American.
right. Let's say a quick hello to Riyadh, who's just joining us right now. Hello, Riyadh. How are you?
Hello, I'm fine, thank you.
Very good. So we're just in the last part of the story that we've been reading for the
Yeah,
last two
yeah.
classes.
I'm sorry. I just joined that, so I was curious about the lesson. Uh, okay, I'm sorry. Just
No problem.
That's right.
Uh,
okay. Thank you.
have you been following along? Were you listening before, or did you just join us now? Were you watching?
I was on free, but I just joined. That's all. Just joined into public link. I'm still new.
Oh, okay. So you didn't read the story, right?
I didn't. You can just send me. I think I see it on the chat bar here, and
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Okay. Well, we've only got about 10 minutes left or so, not even 10 minutes. So we're just finishing up the story that we've been reading, okay?
Okay, I'll read it later.
Okay, no problem. All
Thank
right.
you.
So in this part, um, John John obviously decides that he's not going to go home. But what's Vic's attitude about taking? Remember, Vic's the guy with the wad of money, right? So what's Vic's attitude about taking John's bonus money? Adi, what's Vic's attitude?
Okay. Um,
This part here where he says, he's a man, right? He wants to play. Ain't nobody forcing him. Does Vic feel bad about continuing to take his money?
yes.
He does? Why?
He's a man. He's a man. He wants to play and nobody forcing him, right? Ain't no forcing me, John said.
Does Vic feel bad about taking John's bonus money?
Mm, what I supposed to do?
Vic is, yeah,
I
what am I
think
supposed to do? Yeah, in other words, hey, what am I supposed
yeah,
to do? He's giving me his money. He keeps playing. Yeah, he's an adult. Does he feel
yeah,
bad about taking his money?
yes, it feels bad. I think because I
Why?
don't know what
Why?
to do. Don't know what to do.
No, that's not what he's being ironic. He's not serious. Hey,
Oh,
what am I
okay.
supposed to do? Hey, if you want to give me your money, what am I supposed to do? Say no? Of course I'm going to take it.
Oh, okay.
So he's being a bit ironic, actually.
Mhm.
Does he feel bad? No, he doesn't feel
No,
bad at all. Is John is John gambling? Um, is anyone else gambling? Let's just go back to a little bit of the story. Is anyone else gambling besides John and Vic?
yes.
At this point in the story, in the beginning they
No.
were. At this point in the story, is there anyone else playing?
Oh, no.
There's no one
It's true.
else.
No one else. Yes.
Does that seem suspicious to you?
Spacious.
Suspicious. Does it
Yes.
seem suspicious? In other words, does it seem odd that nobody else is playing except for John, the guy that Vic hates? Does it seem strange that nobody else is gambling at this point except for the guy that Vic hates? And the guy who Vic hates, John, that keeps losing and losing? Does it seem like a coincidence?
No.
I hope not, because we get the idea here that the narrator, at least, as we'll see, starts to catch on. Maybe this is not a
Yes.
coincidence. Maybe this is all part of the plan. Um,
Yes.
okay, go ahead, Adi. Keep reading. Next part.
Okay. Which had a fat, round
Vic.
face, a little.
Vic.
Okay. Fig. Fig had a fat, round face and a little black glasses. He was polished, but look,
Kamikaze.
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 Kamikaze. What is
Those.
kamikaze?
You know what a kamikaze is? In World War II,
No.
the Japanese fighter pilots that would commit suicide with their planes. If they ran out of ammunition, they would crash their planes into the enemy. They'd crash their planes into the ships or whatever. Kamikaze pilots. They would sacrifice their lives. So he had this, he
Wow.
was Polish, but he somehow looked like a kamikaze pilot. Whatever that means.
Sorry.
You,
Okay.
you,
His cheeks. Okay.
go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. His cheeks were red, and his glasses were fogged. Fogged. Seems to
Fog.
me from the fog. Fogged.
Fogged.
It seems to fogged.
There you go.
Okay, fogged. It seems to me from the growth of his trickery.
Yeah, his glasses were fogged, I think, from how
Yes.
much he was deceiving John. In other words, the narrator has caught on that this is not a coincidence. He's doing it deliberately. He's stealing the guy's money. Somehow, the game is fixed. So this
Mm,
kamikaze look is probably because his face is so distorted because he's just so completely evil. He can't hide it. Okay, keep going, Adi.
Okay. You 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 want to quit, John? Vic said. Great white dove here thinks I'm hustling you to quit. So if what if you sucks a gambler, just walk away, right? Nobody hustling, nobody here, said John. See, see, dope, Vic said to me. John's a man. I'm that, said John. Soon John was wedding and throwing his last stand. Fair's, fra- fair's fair. He gasped and launched out.
Gasped. Gasped.
Gasped, gasped, gasped. Is that
Not
how? Is
gasped, but
like that?
with a T at
Gasp,
the end. Gasped.
gasp, gasp,
Good. And
gasp,
lurched out. So gasped is when
and
like when you have your last breath, you gasp. Right? Fair's fair, he gasped. So
okay.
is this how is this an ironic line? Fair's fair, John says. How is this how is this an ironic line? Is the game fair?
No, the game is not fair.
Does John know it's not fair?
No,
No.
he doesn't because kind if he know, it's gonna be a big disaster.
Exactly. He doesn't know. He'd probably kill someone at this point if he knew. So he
Yes.
has no idea. And he's just lost all of his money. Let me see how much we have to read here. We've got to stop because we're at the end of the hour. But
Yes.
so read the rest on your own, okay? And
Okay.
even if we start a new story in the next class, we'll still talk about this in the beginning at least. Look at the last page here on page 12. Questions to
Mhm.
make you think. So what I did is I read this again yesterday and I put in questions that I think will lead you to what I think is the message of the story. So these are my own questions that were going through my mind as I read the story. Okay, they're not very scientific or whatever. Like I didn't have a method. I just basically read through it, and whatever I was thinking, I put down. Particularly the last one. Was this a Christmas story? What did it have to say about Christmas for you? I mean, the title of the story, as you'll read, is
Mhm.
Christmas 1984, which you can see at the top.
That's right.
So how how serious or how ironic is the title supposed to be? That's what I want you to keep in mind as you read, okay? So we'll talk about these questions on next Tuesday. Okay? And Riyadh, if you want to join us next Tuesday at the same hour, read the story, think about these questions, and we'll start class talking about the story then. Okay,
Okay,
everyone?
thank you. I
All right.
will.
Okay, great. Okay.
One question before we leave, can I?
Yeah, fast because I got to start the next one right now.
Yeah.
Quick.
Who is okay? Who is the other character who is I said and then who always I said? Is there a sis?
It's always the narrator. It's always this guy that's like the we assume it's the alter ego of George Saunders because this is like a
Oh,
memoir.
okay.
All right, I got to start
Okay.
the next class, so I'll be back in 30 seconds for that. Stick around for our last business class. We're going to do a reading in just a moment, okay?
Okay.
All right,
Let's
bye for
jump.
now. Bye for now.